Alright, what's going on everyone? Innistrad Crimson Vow is nearly upon us, and with it comes 2 new commander decks. So the purpose of this video, guys, is to give you a brief overview of those decks so you can decide which deck is best for you. I don't have time to go over every single card, it'll take forever, so I will leave links to the complete deck list in the description below. Definitely check that out. I'll also leave Amazon affiliate links to the decks. Those are sponsored links, though I highly encourage you, please go and buy those at a local game store. But we're just going to give an overview of these decks, see what they're all about, and see which one suits our fancy. So let's start with Spirit Squadron. This deck has Millicent, Restless Revenant at the helm, which is a 7 mana 4/4 flyer, but that cost is reduced by the number of spirits we control, and of course this is a tribal spirits deck, so you can significantly reduce the price of this. Makes it very easy to recast over and over again. It also creates 1/1 flying spirit tokens whenever a non-token spirit we control dies or deals combat damage to a player. So not only is this a tribal spirits deck, but this is actually going super wide with tons of 1/1 spirit tokens. As you can see in the art, it's surrounded by these little spirits. That's what this card is all about. That's what this deck is all about, creating an army of spirits. So the deck has tons of ways to go super wide with spirit tokens. You know, it has things like Ayobi, Field of Souls, Haunted Library. The first will produce 3/3 tokens whenever we cast spirits, which are pretty big tokens, and it does it with every single spirit we play. Field of Souls makes tokens when our creatures die, so that's great. And Haunted Library can make them when our opponent's creatures die. We do have to pay 1, but the point of these cards is just to keep producing spirit tokens, and this is just the tip of the iceberg, because there are also things like Hallowed, Spirit Keeper, Custody Soulbinders, Ethereal Investigator. You can pause and read these if you want, but to summarize, if you just want to get a brief idea of what all these cards do, they spit out tons of spirit tokens. They all do. They just spirits constantly. You're going to need a whole bunch of spirit tokens, guys, or you're going to need some spin down dice, because you're going to be tracking a lot of spirit tokens, and this still isn't all of the cards. You know, there's Priest of Blessed Graph, Occult Epiphany, Storm of Souls. It's over and over. You can just pump out the spirit tokens. So naturally, you know, after we go super wide with all these tokens, we want to make them more powerful. So we have Lords, we have Supreme Phantom, we have Drogskull Captain. These are your typical, you know, give everything +1/+1. Perfectly reasonable. Turn your 1/1 spirits into 2/2 spirits, double their power. But we also have more terrifying ways to pump up our board with things like Mirror Entity and Drogskull Reinforcement. So Mirror Entity, a classic of course. If you have 5 mana, you can pay 5 and turn all your 1/1 flyers into 5/5 flyers, right? The X mana, everything has X for power, X for toughness, becomes very powerful when you can dump 6 or 7 mana into it, and also when all your creatures have flying. And then the reinforcements will give all your spirits melee, which means that they will give +1/+1 for each opponent you attack this turn. So if you just send 1 token at each opponent, that's going to be +3/+3, turning all your 1/1s into 4/4s just with this one card. So basically, we're just pumping out tons of flying spirits, and then we're making them very big. There's also some pretty crazy card draw in the stack, like with Distant Melody, Reconnaissance Mission, both of which can basically just draw you 1,000,000 cards, literally 1,000,000. The spell lets you draw cards based on the number of spirits you control. Control 5 spirits, draw 5. Control 30 spirits, draw 30. And the enchantment lets you draw whenever those 30 spirits deal combat damage, so that's pretty good. And there is, of course, tons more we don't have time to talk about. The deck comes with 2 new alternate commanders with partner, but there's also like removal, there's board sweepers, there's some super powerful spirits that don't technically produce tokens, but they're all still pretty good. But basically, guys, with this deck, expect to flood the board with an army of flying spirits and pump them up. That's generally what you're going to be doing with the Spirit Squadron deck. The second deck is Vampiric Bloodline, which has Streffen Maurer Progenitor as the commander. I also have no idea if I pronounced that correctly, but he's a 4 mana 3/2 flyer that at the end of your turn will create blood tokens for each opponent that lost life. So blood tokens, of course, they're like treasures, I suppose, or more like clues, I guess technically. They're artifact tokens that can be sacrificed to discard and draw cards. So basically, as you're dishing out damage, you're making these blood tokens that you can use to filter through your draws. But this commander commander also lets you sacrifice 2 of those tokens when you attack to put a vampire into play, tapped and attacking from your hand. So this is a tribal vampire deck, but the goal isn't necessarily to go wide with a bunch of vampires, right? Normally when you think of tribal vampires or tribal anything, you think go super wide, get like 10 creatures in play, and then pump them all up. But this deck and this commander actually wants to cheat in big vampires by creating blood tokens. So those big vampires include things like Markov Enforcer, Necropolis Regent, Butcher of Malakir. So the first one will actually fight a creature when it enters. So basically it comes in as a surprise when you attack, right? You attack with your commander, you sacrifice a couple tokens, and then you slam this in play for free. It fights a blocker, gets rid of it, it's tapped and attacking itself, and then also when it kills a creature, it creates a blood token, which allows you to get something else for free the following turn. The Regent is not only huge, but it also puts a ton of counters on creatures when they deal damage. Also great as a surprise attacker, right? If you get this into play tapped and attacking when no one's expecting it, it hits immediately and just pumps your entire board permanently with those counters. And even though the Butcher is only a 4/4, it will force everyone else at the table to sacrifice creatures whenever your vampires die, which allows you to be aggressive, because this deck is a little bit more aggressive, right? It's trying to, just slam these big giant vampires in really quick and continuously turn them sideways and try to kill everyone as quickly as possible by overwhelming them with kind of like oversized vampires in the early game or mid game really. But the point is, big vampires fast, and the deck has a ton of big vampires like this. Vampiric Dragon, Crossway Troublemakers, Patron of the Vein. All of these are big, powerful vampires. Once again, you can pause and read these if you want. The Patron is particularly powerful because, like Markov Enforcer, it enters and immediately blows up a blocker, which can be overwhelming. If someone has something on defense, they think they're safe from attack, and you can flash it in kind of by sacrificing blood tokens and then blow up that blocker. Very powerful, and it will also put counters on the rest of your creatures when it kills something, which can also be kind of a surprise for defenders. So there you go. And there is really just a ton of beaters in this deck. I don't want to go over every single one, but we have Narkana Revenant, Timothar, Bloodlord of Vazgoth. Just expect to be surprising people by slamming these big giant vampires in, tapped and attacking during the combat phase, and just taking people by storm, basically. Of course, for all this to work, we need blood tokens, so there are a few extra ways to generate more of those. We have Glass Cast Heart, Arterial Alchemy, Cambar. All of these just help generate blood tokens. The Heart will generate them when vampires attack, can also generate 1/1s that can attack, and if you manage to accumulate 13 blood tokens, it can actually be sacrificed to make each opponent lose 13 life, and then you gain 13, which is pretty crazy if you can create a bunch of blood tokens. The enchantment will generate a few tokens when you play it, but it also turns them all into equipment that can be attached to your vampires. That's a little spicy and unexpected. And then Cambar will produce tokens whenever one of your creatures dies. So basically, it's just all of these help you get a pile of blood tokens so you can get those free big giant crazy vampires in play. Naturally, as a tribal vampire deck, there are tribal vampire enablers. We have Cordial Vampire, Rakish Heir, Stormkirk Captain. The first two can put a bunch of +1/+1 counters on our vampires in different ways. One triggers when we attack, one triggers when stuff dies. The Captain is more of a traditional vampire lord, just pumps everything, also gives them first strike. There's also a ton of life draining effects, of course, because this is a blood sucking vampire deck. So you get things like Blood Artist, Falkenrath Noble, Sanctum Seeker, which can constantly keep you at a healthy life total while slowly draining everyone else. Also helps create blood tokens with your commander because it puts a blood token for each opponent that lost life. Everyone loses life from Blood Artist. That's gonna be blood tokens for you. And there's plenty more that this deck has to offer that we don't have time to talk about. This deck also has 2 new partner commanders. It has plenty of spot removal, of course, because it's in Rakdos. Has some board sweepers, including a one-sided board sweeper that protects vampires, only kills non-vampires, so that's very useful. And there's plenty of, more tribal vampires, more big stuff. There's just a lot to cover, but basically, this is a vampire deck that focuses on cheating big, expensive vampires into play play and attacking aggressively with them. So if that sounds like your thing, check out Vampiric Bloodline. And those are the decks for Innistrad Crimson Vow. Let me know which deck you're most excited for, and remember to check the description for the complete deck lists, as there are of course plenty more cards. But hopefully that was helpful, guys. Hopefully that gives you just an overview, a general idea of what these decks are going to be doing. And yeah, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.